Hi, I'm Jerry Portwood, founder of the Queer Love Project and host of the Queer Love Podcast. I'm thrilled to have a very special guest with me today, the trailblazer Kate Bornstein. Kate is a performance artist and playwright and author, and if you don't already know Kate's work, you have your homework cut out for you. Her book, Gender Outlaw, on Men, Women, and the Rest of Us, was revolutionary when it was published in 1994 and remains a classic because it challenged traditional concepts of gender and looked critically at the roles society assigns. Plus, her 2012 memoir, A Queer and Pleasant Danger, with its cheeky subtitle, The True Story of a Nice Jewish Boy Who Joins the Church of Scientology and Leaves 12 years later to become the lovely lady she is today, is a must. I got in touch with her earlier this spring when her book, Hello Cruel World, was reissued. It now contains 121 alternatives to suicide for teens, freaks, and other outlaws. Plus, and this is exciting news, there's a 30th anniversary edition of Nearly Roadkill, which she co-wrote with fellow queer icon Caitlin Sullivan in the 1990s, and it has been rebooted for today's readers and is being reissued this September with an updated lens for today's Gen Z readers. And believe me, this lady is prolific, so thanks for joining me today, Kate.
I'm so happy to be here. I mean, that you have a project called the Queer Love Project. What a mountain to climb.
Well, no, I love it. And you were one of these people who told me you just loved what I was doing. So I appreciate your support because coming from you, that means a lot. We have a lot that I want to discuss today. But first, I just wanted to start. How are you doing? You're 77. You're still going strong. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, I'm 77. I never thought I was going to reach this age. Some people know I've had bouts of different kinds of cancer, and they're all gone. They're all in remission, and I'm great and groovy. And the lung cancer was the big one, and that one went into remission about 7 years ago. And when I was 70, I got my first role on Broadway. And it was such a cool thing. So, you live long enough, good things happen when you plant the right seeds.
It's totally true. And you probably don't remember this, but in 2013, we actually talked about it because we were photographing you for the Out 100. And you told me about your cancer diagnoses, and normally you make everyone laugh and you're full of humor, but you had me in tears that day. It really wrecked me, and so I was so happy to hear all the good news. So yeah, it's been a long time. And another thing, because you meet lots of queer babies all the time, we first met 25 years ago when you visited my college, and it was a mind-blowing thing because we weren't talking about non-binary and gender the same way we are now, and I had never heard anybody talk about these things, and you just totally opened my eyes to so much.
Wow, look at us. We are waves upon the water.
One of the things that I wanted to jump into is talking about Gender Outlaw, because in it you detail how you didn't have role models and lacked the language to understand your identity. And even being transgender was on a binary, and that's how we kind of thought about it at the time. And I know that there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to get into that. But also, I just want to acknowledge how far we've come, that we have this language, that we have books like yours. And tell me what that means to you coming from where it was 40 years ago.
When I look at the advances that we've made, that people can grow up knowing that they have options to really fulfill their heart's desire when it comes to self-expression and self-identification in gender and sexuality, I go, oh, isn't that swell? Come on. It's like the grandma in me just goes, yay. And then it comes to the big elephant in the room, and that's today. Today we have forces trying to turn back the clock and return us to the days that I grew up in, which was nobody's talking about it. You're not allowed to teach it. You're not allowed to spread the good word about gender whoopee. But that's not going to stop us. There's too many of us right now. We are a culture. We're not a bunch of disjointed individuals. We know stuff. I was fortunate to be in the position of a gardener and plant some seeds along with some other folks of my generation. And they have been watered, and we have an entire garden now. And you can't mow that down. You could try, and they might succeed to some degree. They might quiet us, they might scare us. And what I want to be in the position of doing now as an elder is help ease that fear, take away that fear.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you explain in Hello, Cruel World is you said, I included everything I'd done instead of killing myself, even the dangerous stuff. There's just one rule, don't be mean. And I love that because we're living in a time where being mean, and even people saying empathy is a weakness, seems to be their guiding light. And we are living in a cruel world. And so did you feel this new sense of urgency? I mean, this is 20 years later, and things are not less cruel, let's put it that way.
Well, before it got as cruel as it is right now, because cruelty is in power, and cruelty was not in power. Like, the polarization really became obvious the moment Obama was running for president. That was back in 2007. My book, Hello, Cruel World, came out in 2006. And from the moment, President Obama was a lightning rod. People could say, look who's president, and that's the fault of blah, 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 blah. And the Tea Party rose up, and then gay marriage was a good thing, and that was another lightning rod. And that has given courage for people to try and shut us up. And what I didn't know when I was writing Hello, Cruel World was how to deal with a bully who said, don't cross this line. Once you cross this line, you're on the other side. You are other. That makes you bad. Other is evil, and that's what you are. And I didn't really address that as deeply as I wished I could have in the first edition. And that's why the second edition, the 20 new alternatives to suicide, deal mostly with this idea of good and evil culture, which is what we've become. I've said that there are 20 new alternatives to suicide in this new edition of Hello, Cruel World. And most of them address the idea of being on one side of the great rift or the other. Alternative to suicide number 120 is called Stay Friends Anyway. And it goes like this. Reeve and I have been friends for just over 50 years. When I was a lookout on L. Ron Hubbard's private yacht, I shared a crow's nest with Reeve. She would climb 40 feet up the forward mast in heels. I'm not making that up. We both managed to escape Scientology in the early 1980s, and then we lost touch with each other until 2008. When we both attended a reunion party for those of us who'd once worked in Scientology's notorious C organization. Our hearts opened wide to each other as only old friends' hearts can do. And then she told me she was a member of the Tea Party. That was the forerunner of today's far-right extremists, MAGA. She was a big fan of radical talk radio, which she listened to when she wasn't watching Fox News. So I told her about me, the lesbian, transsexual, hippie chick queer activist. And I told her I get my news from Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. And we eyed each other for what felt like a full minute. And then we burst out laughing and fell into each other's arms. You know how that goes. And after a bit, we got to talking about politics, and then we got to arguing about politics, and eventually we got mean to each other, because that's how that goes. And we both agreed that we hated that. So over the next few years, we worked out more or less of a truce. We can talk about anything but politics. And that's worked for us, with the exception of a month or two break after the 2020 election when Biden won and Trump refused to concede. Well, at least that was my understanding of what happened. Reeve and I talk with each other on the phone now or on Zoom, and without politics to bicker over. We talk from our hearts with only love for each other. Love and puzzlement, because we both of us think that the other is a bit wacko. Even so, we marvel together at how the world has changed so much since we were kids. We shake our heads together in disbelief at crap we put up with in the virtual prison camp that was our shared Scientology experience. We laugh at cat videos. We open old wounds to each other, and we help each other heal. We laugh together as only two little old New York ladies can laugh. We sigh and we cry as our old shipmates die one by one. And we agree that our lives are so much richer with the other for company here near the end of our lives. We both marvel at the fact that we are both a whole lot more willing and likely to see the humanity in our so-called enemies. Our hearts are so much more at peace. Both Reeve and I urge you to do your best to stick with a friend of yours who's gone a little wacky. We think your hearts are going to feel a whole lot better if you do.
One thing that I love that you write is you said, and I think more people need to think about this, is identities aren't meant to be permanent. They're like cars. They take us from one place to another. We work, travel, and seek adventure in them until they break down beyond repair. At that point, living well means finding a new model that better suits us for the moment. And well, first thing.
Wasn't that smart?
That was smart.
Forgot about that.
And I also was thinking, and we're going to talk about this theory of the gender in 4 dimensions, but I was thinking also about how this applies to relationships, right? Like relationships also can be things that get you at a certain point, and then you might need to change them or move on or tune them up and all these other things. And yet some people don't seem to think that way. And do you think that that's a message that maybe young people aren't hearing, or that they need to hear that more as well, that there's not just one way to live in the world?
Well, I think that's the value of your project, is that you're highlighting the idea of queer love. And queer love is not the idea of, oh, good, there's you and only you for the rest of my life, and you better feel that way about me or you're bad. And, and queer love is saying, oh gosh, you're great. Now let's see if that happens tomorrow. And it's people swimming together. It's people enjoying life together or fighting life together.
I didn't plan to ask you this, but I know one thing that you also explored was relationships within the BDSM community, which was very valuable to you to be able to communicate and to be able to learn new ways of traveling in the world.
Yeah, all my life, and I couldn't articulate this until I entered the world of BDSM dykes. All my life, I just wanted to be of service. I really did. I just wanted to do good for people. And when I stepped into the BDSM world, it was, oh boy, look at this. That's exactly what I get to do. And for a whole year, I got to do that 24/7 for this wonderful BDSM couple. And we weren't a triad. No, it wasn't that. We weren't a throuple. That word wasn't around. I was a slave. And in terms of BDSM, that just means I was in service to them 24/7. And that let me experience being of service to the depth I've never been able to experience it before. And that gave me a rocket booster into my writing.
How so?
I was just starting with this idea of the gender workbook. And I knew I wanted to ask more questions. In Gender Outlaw, in the first edition of Gender Outlaw, I made a lot of statements, and I fixed that in the second edition. But what I found most valuable about my journey with gender was the questions. What is a man? What is a woman? Who says? And what I'm proud of in the gender workbook, which I wrote mostly when I was in this position of slave, is that I asked questions in service of my children and grandchildren. And I say that in my extended family. I was able to include all kinds of people traveling all kinds of gender journeys, and being of service to that kind of diversity was just the most fulfilling moment of my life up to that point.
You also are so great in saying, if you are offended or what I've written invalidates your identity, then I'm wrong, which is something that it's very hard for many people to say. And we know even within the LGBTQ plus community that often we're policing language, we're policing identity, we're policing gender, we're doing all these things even within our own community. And you being able to say you're wrong is such a great thing, because I feel the same way when I get something wrong or need to learn something new.
Bingo.
I teach students, and I have some very, younger 19, 20-year-old students, and they seem to be coming back to this idea of like being more inclusive again and not saying there's one way of doing it. So I'm actually really hopeful. And I wonder if you've seen that, how we go back and forth in these pendulums. You've seen the pendulum swing more than once, as have I. And, I keep telling people, I'm a sort of a pragmatic optimist. I keep telling people that it feels bad now, but I do believe we will swing again and keep going forward.
Yeah, it's a question of who's got power now. It's not a question of who exists, which it was early on in the 50s. We couldn't see each other unless you dove down and threw off everything you ever knew and went to find the queers. And we were there, but you had to really go looking and really want it. And now it's all over. Now they have to police us. And they policed us back then. But that was only when we popped up out of the ground and showed ourselves. Now they're just trying to police us by defining what's a man and what's a woman legally. That's new. That's a brand new occurrence. I got worried when that happened.
Yeah. Since we're in the Queer Love Project, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on some of these things, I first want to know if we can talk at all about your current relationship.
Oh, of course. My current relationship is with my partner, Barbara Corellis, the author of the fabulous queer-friendly Tantra book, Urban Tantra. And she's working on a brandy new book, which will be out in about a year. And it's called The Book of Ecstasy.
Nice.
And this is who I live with. We scare each other at least once a day.
I love it. And so you've had these relationship journeys over your lifetime. Can you explain, as an elder, as you said, that, how one does go from one to the other and survive and thrive and find new love?
The culture in which we love has a huge effect on how we love, how we express our love, how we let our love grow. When I was a guy and it was heterosexual love, you fall in love and that's great, and then you get divorced, but then you never speak with that person again. That person becomes That's not the way it is in the queer world. In the queer world, for the most part, we love this person. Oh my God, I love you. We got to break up. And 6 months later, you're my best friend. And that's the beauty, I think, of queer love, is we don't let it stop. And too often in the heterosexual world, we let it stop.
Yeah, I love that you say that. I was hanging out with a transmasculine friend of mine who I used to have a sexual relationship with, and we're now really, really good friends. And I told him that we were talking, and he was really excited. But I also just love that we can be friends, right? And, and I ask him these questions. Like, even when we had sex, I was like, "This is the first time I've encountered this genitalia. Does this make me pansexual? Am I a different? Am I a different sexuality?" And he was like, "No, you're still gay." And so I'm always learning. So this is a weird question, but it is one I ask a lot of people. Do you have an ideal relationship status? Like, people say that they're in a couple, they're in a throuple, they're single, they're a widow. Like, what is an ideal relationship for you?
Okay, take the word status out of the picture, because status implies static. And that's the end of any relationship. The ideal relationship for me nowadays, looking back, is one that never stops growing. One where you're having to let go of your precious and see the precious that someone else is offering you over and over and over again. This is a precious quality. Oh no, that's why I love you. Oh no, don't change. Oh golly. And then they change and you go, I love you, my darling. And that's queer love.
This is a great answer, and I'm going to steal it when I finally answer this questionnaire, because I think it's true. So this is the hard one that I ask everyone to tackle, but I wonder, how would you define love? And you kind of have already, but one way I try to frame it is it a thing you work at for a long period of time, or is the strong feeling that you feel right at the beginning for that reason?
The answer to that question is yes.
Perfect.
In the queer world, we are basing our identities and our expression in fucking, in sex, in desire, in yum. And that's how we go through the world. It's a very brave thing to do, because all of a sudden you meet someone who's going, yeah, yum, right back at you. And then you start focusing on each other and not on anyone else in the world. For a start, for example, it may not happen in that. Maybe you have, oh, you're the fourth person I'm in love with right now, and join our throuple. But there's a focus. There's a focus that happens. And what is love? I hate you, Jerry. It's the opposite of that. It's taking joy in being asked an impossible question like that. I think when you answer what is love, you've lost it. You know it when you embody it. You know it when you fully experience it. You know it when you can see it in your other's eyes, whether that's one other, three others, or just a mirror. When you look in those eyes, you see it reflected back to you and you go, it's not what I imagined. It's here in real time, and you're allowing me to kind of express that, even though it scares the fuck out of me to express it.
One of the frustrations is the word, because it's so shabby in a way, and we only have in English this one word, whereas like other languages maybe have other ways of expressing some of these feelings. And it kind of made me think about the new thing that you have included in Hello Cruel World, and that I know you're exploring, which is gender in 4 dimensions, and how that even can be applied to love. And I was thinking about love in 4 dimensions, and I started like expanding my mind. So for those who don't know, can you give me a little bit of an encapsulation of your theory of gender in 4 dimensions?
Sure. Let me just start by saying I love you, Jerry. It's true. And how is that? How is that? we're family. And we recognize each other. And we go, I love you. Gender in 4 dimensions explains that kind of love as well. The idea of male, the idea of female are biological realities. They're not the only two, but they are biological realities. However, what we've done with them over thousands and thousands of years as living beings, as humanity, is we've said, well, male is this and female is that. And male has grown into an entire dimension of existence. A dimension of existence. You could walk into that dimension and explore it and have a great time. Female is its entire dimension of existence. There's no end to it. Now, you say that those are the only 2 dimensions. That's okay. We've believed that for a long time. It's 2-dimensional gender. It's not even, we can't even call it gender. We'll call it sex. And you can best illustrate that by drawing a circle on a piece of paper, dividing it down the middle, and saying everything about sex and gender goes into the circle, but goes on one side or the other and can't go the other side. That's it. And that's okay. That's true. That's really important to understand that is the case. It's not that it doesn't exist. It does. And a lot of people live wonderful lives understanding that to be the truth of sex and gender. Some people don't. Some people say, it doesn't work for me. That hurts. No. And we use our imagination to understand something different than those 2 sides of a circle. And as soon as we use our imagination, as soon as we use our wishes, that circle breaks itself out into 3 dimensions and becomes a sphere. And as soon as that happens, that's gender. Gender is 3 dimensions. It includes male and female. It's based on that. But we understand that that's a little more flexible. It's a little more fluid than it was in 2-dimensional existence. And that's the truth of gender. It conflicts with the truth of gender in 2 dimensions, but it doesn't make it any less true. Both are true, even though they conflict with one another. Now, that's where we've kind of come to as a culture, and even as a queer culture. Most of us understand gender as a 3-dimensional phenomenon, male, female, and our imagination. Whoa, that's great. There's another dimension, and that's the fact that gender has to be someplace. It doesn't exist in a void, and it has to exist at some time. The 4th dimension of gender would be space-time. And so instead of a circle on a flat piece of paper, instead of that sphere we get when we extrude that into 3 dimensions, when we take that sphere and extrude that through space and time, we get a continuum. And that continuum allows me to say, I'm a woman. It allows me to say, I'm a little boy. It allows me to say, I'm a man. It allows me to say, I'm non-binary. I'm all of these things at once. Because time is... We don't know what the fuck time is. But we know that we can all of a sudden be all of these things at once. Now, for advanced students, there's a 5th dimension. The 5th dimension is the dimension of possibility. And it's where my continuum of existence kind of meshes with yours. And we understand that we're not really that separate. No. We're here together, and my mind, it's very Vulcan, my mind to your mind, my thoughts to your thoughts. And if you're a Trekkie, you would understand
I do.
that. But it's where we blend. It's where we blend and create. It's the dimension of creativity, if you will, and possibility. And the understanding that possibility exists in dimensions we haven't even dreamed of yet.
I have to say, I'm just going to describe that just hearing you say these things is giving me this sense of sort of peace and relief, which I did not expect to feel. And I can tell that you've learned from the Dalai Lama. I read that that's part of the inspiration was some of the Buddhist teachings, but there's something there that made me feel more at peace, which thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad. That's what I was hoping for. Because if you got a theory and it doesn't bring peace to somebody else, it's a fucked up theory. Throw it away.
Well, and I think to go along my path of trying to figure out why when heterosexual coupling was no longer compulsory, or that's what we've decided, why that's freaked out so many people, where it's also brought so much joy to others, and that is part of the struggle that we're continually dealing with at the moment. Because, yeah, it's frightening when we're changed and we're talking about these things and saying it's not easy. There's a lot more things to think about than just the way you were brought up.
Yeah, and mom and dad probably were of the understanding that there's two and two only. And again, we got to remember that's the truth of it. That's their truth. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. And our approach to someone who understands, if we understand gender, let's say, in 3 dimensions, male, female, and mind. I get to, gender's in my mind. Okay. So we meet someone who says, nope, it's 2 and 2 only. We don't say, no, you're wrong. Because what have we done at that point except create a binary? And that doesn't work. We keep saying binaries don't work. Well, we create one the moment we say you're wrong. Instead, what we could do would be to listen to someone explain their truth of 2 dimensions and go, is there anything in there that doesn't quite work for you? Anything in there that gets in your way, that makes you feel smaller, that hurts you, that gives someone an upper hand over you? And generally, there's gonna be something. But everybody has to find that for themselves. We did as queers. We said, no, no, that doesn't work. And that's what I said when I finally understood that gender was 3 dimensions. I finally said, that doesn't work. And I had to understand that it changes every single moment. What a pain in the ass that is. And that's sex and gender. And you are so cool. You applied that to love. I never have thought about that. That's fucking cool.
Thanks.
Tell me more about that, please.
Well, I mean, it's just in my head because I think when you're talking about possibility, I think about imagination. And I think what I think about queer love is that it involves imagination. And some people don't want it to work that hard in their imagination because there's so many possibilities. And they'd rather it be a lot simpler, right? Of saying, okay, there's this person, that's the one person, and I'm just going to be with that one person for the rest of my life in one way. And I think it can be much more creative. At least that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think you're on the right road. The smartest person I know is Jennifer Finney Boylan. I was lucky to spend 6 weeks on the road with her and Caitlyn Jenner and 6 other trans women on the show I Am Kate. And I got to know Jenny very, very well. She is the smartest person I know. She says the problem with people not understanding trans is a failure of imagination. And they can't imagine anything more. And you go, wait a minute, I've seen enough science fiction to understand that there are people that exist in 2 dimensions. There's a 2-dimensional world. We know that if we watch the movie Ant-Man, and that exists, and it's lovely, but they can't imagine anything more than that.
Well, I think even in Hello Cruel World, you do a good job of explaining how confusing it is to be what we call a teen, right? You're not child, you're not adult, you're somewhere in this weird mutant land where you feel like a freak and nothing makes sense. And I remember that feeling, and I understand how confusing that is. But as we get older, we forget, right, that's how we felt, or we don't want to feel that way anymore. And so then it becomes harder to help those people going through those feelings. So I love that you're so connected in that way, at least, to understand that.
Yeah, I think that what happens eventually is that in some respect, if we actually believe that gender and sexuality and identity itself change from moment to moment, day to day, every year, then we find ourselves in the same position as teens. I don't belong in what I just left. I don't know what I'm heading toward. I'm floating free. And that, I think, is the queer experience.
Well, we've talked about a lot, and I want to make sure I ask this question because I have not read Nearly Roadkill, and I know it's about love on the internet, which in the 90s was a very different kind of fluid space. And so I am curious what we can expect from Scratch and Wink in this new updated version.
Oh boy. My pal Caitlin Sullivan and I wrote this book, Nearly Roadkill, and it came out in 1995. And Caitlin and I had the best time ever back in the early 90s on America Online in chat rooms where you could sign on as any identity you wanted. Anything. You could be anything you could imagine. And you can interact with people in that identity and find people who are also in that identity. And that's what happens with these 2 people. Their screen names are Scratch and Wink. And they keep signing on in different identities over and over and over again. But they always manage to find each other, and no matter what identities they're in, they fall in love with each other. And it's that story. It's a romance novel, and it runs afoul of a government plot and a corporate plot to take over the internet and manage your identities. Does that sound familiar? And the Scratch and Wink become these revolutionaries, not by choice, but by default. And they run afoul of this government scheme, and they have a way to foul it up. And they become outlaws, and they're on the run together. And when it first came out, we had to describe to people the online world. No one knew what the fuck that was. And we had to describe a modem and baud and signing on, what that meant. And it took up a good third of the book, those explanations. And so this redo, Generous Press, is a wonderful press. Their job is their goal is, their dream is to publish queer romance novels. And they contacted me, and it turned out they really liked Nearly Roadkill, and what do you think? Can we publish it again, and can we bring it up to date? And I said, sure, I'd love that, because it just died on the vine. But now we've added through the eyes of a non-binary kind of sleuth journalist who's looking back at Scratch and Wink, and the day the internet shut down. And that was famous in history, the day the internet shut down. How did it happen? We don't know, but we know Scratch and Wink were mostly responsible for that. How did that happen? And she uncovers this amazing love story and is writing about it, and we see it through their eyes. And I'm just so happy with this book. I've never read this in my novel. I haven't written a novel.
Well, it's a novel, but I feel like everything you write is a sort of manifesto, because it does give us a way of thinking and looking at the world, and I appreciate that. So I look forward to it. I'm definitely going to check it out. Obviously, we could talk all day, and I want to thank you for giving me so many new things to think about. Before we go, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you wanted to make sure that we did address?
No, you're a great interviewer. You opened so many doors. You did. No, you did. And talking with you has been a great joy.
I'm glad we did it.
Well, you listen. That's a big deal. And you've asked questions that have led me on a wonderful journey for this past hour or so.
Well, thanks, Auntie Kate. I love you too. And I want to thank you for joining me. And for those who don't already have a copy of Hello, Cruel World, you can buy your second, and you can give one as a gift and to anyone you love. And be on the lookout for Nearly Roadkill, which is going to be out this fall.
One more thing, because there's always one more thing. You brought it up. When I sat down to write Hello, Cruel World, I wanted to do something about the increasing number of queer kids killing themselves. And I did all kinds of research with suicide prevention. And every suicide prevention book I read came down to this: be good. Live like this, and you won't want to kill yourself. Be good. And that set up this terrible binary of good and evil again, good and bad. And I didn't want to do that. And so instead of telling people don't kill yourself, this book is more about do this instead. Try this instead of killing yourself. This might work instead. And there were all kinds of rules in the suicide prevention books I read of, 10 commandments, and then that's good, and then that's a basic thing. When you live in a binary of good and bad, but queer kids and kids in general don't. And so the only rule in the book is don't be mean. And it comes down to this: you can do anything you want. You can love how you want. You can fuck how you want. You don't have to fuck at all. You can do anything to make your life a little more worth living. Only one rule: don't be mean. And when you start in our world looking at the things that make us happy, the things that make life more worth living, are very often the things that piss off God. And things that we've been taught, no, don't do that, you're going to hell. And so in the book, I give you a get out of hell free card. And it works like this: you do anything you want to make your life more worth living. Anything. Just don't be mean. And at the end of your life, if you get sent to hell for doing something that wasn't mean to anybody, show Satan your card. It'll be in your heart. Just take it out of your heart, show it to Satan. I will do your time for you.
This is the service.
All right, because I believe that with all my heart. You do anything, and as long as you're not mean, you ain't going to hell. Not on my watch.
I love that. Thank you. If you're a new listener to the Queer Love podcast and aren't already a subscriber to the Queer Love Project, you can find us on Substack. It's a platform where LGBTQ plus people can share stories and experiences about whatever love means to them. We keep all our words free and publish original personal essays and interviews every week. So go to queerloveproject.substack.com and subscribe and support us today.